Klaus Schwab, public enemy number one. Forget about the neighbor that you don't like down the street or the guy that you don't like that you see on TV. This guy right here. That's public enemy number one. Let's get right into the episode. It is episode 463 of the Sold Not For Sale podcast, but I think I'm going to release this one first. I already made 3 videos, but I'm going to make this one first because it's fun. I love a good conspiracy theory. And Joe Rogan is sitting down with a gentleman who's given him a great conspiracy theory, one that I've never heard before. And maybe you have, if you're older, if you're one of the older generations, maybe you have heard of this. Maybe you even lived through this. Rock and roll was part of a conspiracy. The love movement in the 60s, 70s, peace and love, it was a conspiracy. Let's get into it. Before I do, I got to bring you to the store. This is IamCoachColin.com. If you want any of this amazing merch that we have on IamCoachColin.com, hit up IamCoachColin.com. We have Sold Not For Sale merchandise, anti-WEF merchandise, and the Great Resist. Do not join the Great Reset. Join the Great Resist instead, because crickets taste like garbage. Don't let them fool you. If you want 10% off of anything that you've seen in the store, put in the discount code area, I am Coach Colin, 1 L in the colon, all one word, all capital letters, gets you 10% off. And if you purchase anything from the site, thank you very much. You are much appreciated. Now let's get right into the clip because I like this conspiracy. I should do one of these with my wife as well because I think she'd be into this too.
But how did you get to these conclusions? Like it seems that like accepting Fringe and accepting the chaos of San Francisco, like, oh, this is good. This is a part of it. This is how this works. This is why it works. Yeah. Like, how did you develop that perspective?
Well, it's just, if you take a historical perspective, it's just like, okay, I mean, it's like, just an easy example. If you like rock music, it just basically modern rock and roll basically came from the Haight-Ashbury in the basically mid to late 60s, and then from Laurel Canyon, which was another one of these sort of cultish environments in the mid to late 60s. And there was like specific moments in time in both of these places. And, basically all of the great rock and roll from that era that determined everything that followed basically came out of this. So, do you want that or not?
Right.
If you want it, that's what you get. I'll give you. Here's a crazy. There's the other book about Laurel Canyon that's even crazier than Chaos. It's the book called Weird Scenes in the Canyon. Okay, you would love this one. So Laurel Canyon was like the Haight-Ashbury of Los Angeles, right? So Laurel Canyon was like the music scene, the sort of music and drug and hippie scene of Laurel Canyon is actually where the hippie movement started. There was actually a specific group in Laurel Canyon in LA in about 1965. There was a guy named Vito Polikas, and he had a group called the Freaks, and they were like a non-violent version of the Manson cult, and it was all these young girls, and they basically would go to clubs, and they were the ones to do the beads and the hair and like all the leather, like all the hippie stuff. Like they got that rolling. And so like they were in Laurel Canyon, and then Laurel Canyon, it was like ground zero. There was like this moment where it's like Jim Morrison, The Doors, and Crosby, Stills and Nash, and Frank Zappa, and was it John Phillips, and was the Mamas and the Papas, and the Byrds, and the Monkees, and like all of these like iconic bands of that time basically catalyzed over about a 2-year period in Laurel Canyon. The conspiracy theory in this book basically is that the whole thing was an op, and it was a military intelligence op, and the evidence for the theory is that there was an Air Force military propaganda production facility at the head of Laurel Canyon called Lookout Mountain, which today Jared Leto owns and actually lives
so I was just going to say that.
Yeah, but it was in that era in the 50s through the 70s, it was a vertically integrated military. Yes, it was a production facility for film and music.
But by the way, have you met Jared Leto?
I briefly, yeah.
One of the most interesting guys I've ever talked to.
Incredible, and it makes total sense.
Totally normal, like really fun to talk to. Yeah. Not like what you would think of as a famous actor at all. Yeah. I had dinner with him and drinks. He's a fucking great guy.
But he lives in a military...
he showed me all the pictures. He showed me. I'm like, this is wild.
Yeah, so...
it's amazing.
If you believe the moon landing was faked, this is where they faked it. Like, this
I thought they'd supposed to do it in the Nevada desert.
No, these were the sound... because they had sound stages. They had totally contained sound stages. They had full sound production capability. And so the theory goes, basically... there were 3 parts to the conspiracy theory. So one is they had the production facility right there, right where all these musicians showed up. 2 is the musicians, like a very large percentage of these young musicians, were sons and daughters of senior U.S. military and intelligence officials.
Including Morrison.
Including Jim Morrison, whose father was the head of naval operations for the Vietnam War at the time. And there were these other, I forget which ones, but there were these other musicians at the time where their parents were like senior in like military, like psychological operations. And like that's all real, like that's all documented. And then third is the head of the Rand Corporation, who was one of the inspirations for the Dr. Strangelove character in the movie. So he was the guy doing all the nuclear planning for nuclear war. He lived right in the heart of the hippies in Laurel Canyon.
Whoa.
In this famous house that's still there. And so the theory basically goes that the anti-war movement before the hippies was basically a square movement. It was all these basically young people, very clean cut. The men were all wearing, if you look at old like Vietnam War protests, like everybody's all like dressed up like they're going to a business meeting. It was like, and it was developing into a real threat. And so the theory is the hippie movement and rock and roll and the drug culture of the 60s was developed in order to basically sabotage the anti-war movement.
Wow.
Right. Which basically is what happened, right? Because then what happened is the anti-war movement became associated with the hippies, and that caused Americans to decide what side they were on, and then that led to Nixon being elected twice.
Which was also a part of chaos, because that was the idea behind the Manson family and funneling acid to them. The facility was equipped with a soundstage, screening rooms, film storage vaults, and naturally a bomb shelter. During its 22 years of operation, Lookout Mountain Laboratory produced approximately 6,500 classified films for the Department of Defense and the Atomic Energy Commission, documenting nuclear test series such as Operation Greenhouse, Operation Teapot, and Operation Buster Jangle.
So one of the conspiracy theories. Okay, here's another conspiracy theory. You've seen all the grainy footage of nuclear test blasts that
Sure.
with the mushroom clouds, and there are always these grainy things, and there's all these like little houses lined up and these little trees lined up, and it blows everything down. Well, there's always been a conspiracy theory that those were all basically fabricated at this facility, that those bombs actually were never detonated, and that basically the U.S. military was basically faking these bomb tests to freak out the Russians, to make us think that we had weapons. We had basically a potency to our nuclear weapon arsenal that we actually didn't have at the time.
How did they fake it?
Okay. Slow down. This guy just outed rock and roll and the anti-war movement, and then he just moves on to there was no wow. Jeez, I like this guest. I was reading the intro to this guest. I'm going to try and say his name. It's Marc Andreessen. I think that's how you say it. It's Andreesson. This is amazing. Now, the one thing I know, I'm just definitely going to have my wife research this. The fact that major people in rock and roll and in the music industry were also kids of people who were in the military. You know why this is making me say wow? Because if you look up, there's rap artists. For those of you who are older, there's rap artists, current rap artists. I want to say Martin Lawrence. He's not an artist, I know, he's a comedian, but he comes from a military family. J. Cole comes from a military family. J. Cole, in fact, was born in Germany. I think Martin Lawrence, I'm not sure, but there's a bunch of people in the industry that come from military families. And when you say that, it means that their parents were in the military, high level or not. This gentleman's talking about all of these people back in the day coming from high level military parents. That is crazy. Because here's the thing. That's what happened in the past. But then when we come to J. Cole, who's a current platinum selling artist right now, wow. It's still happening today, potentially. This is going to be an episode that I'm going to do with my wife because I need some legwork done. Definitely. So stay tuned for that. We're going to be doing a little bit of research into that. That's amazing. And then here's the other thing. Here's what could be happening today from what he's telling me. They actually infiltrated the anti-war movement and then changed the way it looked. The same thing is happening today. I mean, Joe Rogan shared an article recently where these people, I forget which paper, I think it was a Wall Street Journal, I'm not sure, but they were talking about how working out is something that far-right extremists do. And they're trying to link the far-right extremists, white supremacy, to working out and physical fitness. So they're not exactly infiltrating these people and changing the way they look. They're finding out what these people do, and now they're trying, like the positive activities that these people participate in, Because, far right extremists, this is a person who probably doesn't want to be censored in their speech, wants to organize against mandates, wants to go against the grain, wants to go against the mainstream media, doesn't want to listen to the mainstream media, has a bunch of views that go against the whole agenda, believes that there's an agenda in place, probably doesn't gel well with, people in the alphabet community. There's a whole bunch of things, right? Probably doesn't like the current administration of the government. So if you could take those people, find out the positive things they do, and now link that to something extremely negative, I'm just letting my mind go crazy right now. But wow, very interesting guest. I hope they stay in this vein. I hope they stay here. There's some more. There's another conspiracy he talks about at length. I'm gonna try and get you guys some actual video that I can show you beforehand, so you have context to what they're talking about, because I don't want you to watch it like all small. But wow, amazing. Imagine that. I really want to hear in the comments, like the video, but in the comments, if you're someone who lived through this mid-60s, mid-70s, that whole movement, I would love to hear what your perspective was. Like how all this came about, if it just came about like all of a sudden, or was it, because like when I started getting high in school, it was a thing that slowly happened. I wonder if with all these people, it was like the anti-war movement was just like a bunch of, plants. When people are just like a bunch of plants come in, they all start getting high, it spreads, they become people of influence within the group. And then the way they act and the things that they do and the substances they ingest, all of a sudden start becoming the norm. People start getting pressured into doing it, and then it kind of spreads. And maybe that's how the love movement started. I wonder how organic the starting of all that was, Because now, think about that again, going back to music and how music can influence the way people look at a certain movement, right? Rock and roll, the anti-war movement, all of a sudden it's hippies, long hair, grungy looking types. And now go over to hip hop music. At one point, at one point, hip hop music was very positive. When you go back to Tribe Called Quest and De La Soul, they were very positive. They had uplifting messages. They had some regular young people themes of drinking and sex and things of that nature. But for the most part, they were trying to stay pretty positive, especially De La Soul. But then slowly, people like Ice Cube and Dr. Dre and all of these gangster rappers came in, and it totally changed the face of what hip hop was. Hip hop went from being a bunch of conscious young urban men talking about the struggles that they've gone through, Public Enemy, again, KRS-One, again, talking about all of the struggles in a very articulate way, in a very poetic way. They would speak about what they're going through. And then all of a sudden, F the Police came out, And then they were posing with guns and all of this stuff. And it's like, maybe they infiltrated the same way and changed the way we look at the Black experience. It went from a bunch of people talking, again, very poetically about what they're going through, not glorifying it, but, really exposing what was happening in their streets, to all of a sudden it was glorifying and they were boasting and they're the worst of the worst. And now they have the guns and they have the drugs and this and that. And next thing you know, you don't want anything to do with it. Interesting. Very interesting. Whew. I got to look into that some more. Let me know what you think in the comments. And again, if you're someone who's lived through that or more about Laurel Canyon and everything, hit me up in the comments. I want to hear about it. I'm definitely going to take it in and with my research that I do with my wife, because this is pretty cool. Very, very interesting. Let me know what you think in the comments. Like the episode, like this video. It helps so much. You have no idea. Boosts us out of the shadow realm. But with topics like these, maybe we're destined to stay here. I don't know. But we could give it a try. Like the video, and hopefully it could help us out of here. Thank you so much. Episode 463. I am out.